Wow. Konnichiwa, watashi wa Fundi desu, minami Afrika, kareke mashita. I hope I said that right. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's such an honor to be here with you all this afternoon. Having a very challenging conversation, and I'm actually very glad that David was open, honest to say the words black female, black woman, because sometimes I walk into a room, it almost feels like people are scared to say it as if I'm going to be offended, but that is what I am. That is who I am, and I proudly own that title. Very happy to be on the stage today, sharing views, perspectives with all of you esteemed colleagues and fellow enthusiasts of our wonderful sport of horse racing. And my dearest and sincerest appreciation to the ARC Secretariat for really including me in these discussions and for us putting a conversation like this in this forum today, because it is quite an important one to tackle. As David has already mentioned, I'll be speaking about achieving well-being and inclusivity, but more on the boardroom side. But before I begin, I'd like to start off with something light. I'd like to share a video and maybe a little bit of perspective of this video. A very strange video to have to start with, but I think after Michael Fitzsimons yesterday started off with the Cinderella story, I feel much better with the video that I'm about to show. I was preparing myself a couple of weeks ago for this presentation, thinking, what am I going to say? How am I going to say it? Am I going to be offensive? Must I be punchy? And my daughter and I, she's 16 years old, were watching this movie. And I hated the entire movie, but this one clip really sat with me, and I'd like to just share it with you.
Oh, but since I came all this way, could I just meet the woman in charge, your CEO?
Oh, that would be me.
Oh, your CFO.
Me.
Your COO.
Here.
President of the Barbie division.
President. I'm a man with no power. Does that make me a woman?
Are any women in charge?
Listen, I know exactly where you're going with this, and I have to say, I really resent it. We are a company literally made of women. We had a woman CEO in the 90s, and there was another one at some other time. So that's two right there. Women are the freaking foundation of this very long, phallic building. We have gender-neutral bathrooms up the wazoo. Every single one of these men love women. I'm the son of a mother. I'm the mother of a son. I'm the nephew of a woman aunt. Some of my best friends are Jewish. What I'm trying to say is, get in the box, you Jezebel! What, I can't say Jezebel now?
So, moral of the story, some 3 takeaway key points. No, I'm not standing here pretending to be Barbie at all. However, the message that I'd like to share is perhaps a lot of the people outside looking into this industry perhaps do feel like that Barbie perspective. We're the women in this organization. We're the women in the boardrooms of these organizations. Let's really try not to be those men in the room. Let's try to be a little bit more gender aware, inclusive, and last but not least, be careful what you say about women. Sometimes it may not end well at all, as you could see with that CEO. So a little bit about my story, because I believe that sharing my story and really some of the experiences that I've lived, whether it's in this career or before where I was a chief operating officer running airports in South Africa, really bring to the fore some conversations and some of the experiences I felt around inclusivity and diversity. So, in a nutshell, I am the first black female CEO of a horse racing operator in South Africa, the largest one of the 3, soon to be 2. And as part, I guess, of this deliberate strategy of me joining the team of 4 racing CEO was largely one to highlight really, really the importance of bringing in more of the South African population. South Africa is very much a heterogeneous society, but in that colorfulness, in that vast cultural differences that we've got, we are still very much a divided and not truly inclusive society. And so I believe that part of me coming on board was really to try and bring that to the fore and try to bring a different experience. I now own a horse or a couple of horses, and to say to other females, black females, younger people, I like to still think I'm young, that it really is possible, and start to traditionally include people that have rather been traditionally not included. We've spoken already about attracting a very, very diverse audience and bring in the younger population with some of the things that we're trying to do as for racing. And last but not least, some of the things that are very core to us as an organization was about inclusivity, bringing in the previously marginalized, like the grooms in South Africa, and ensuring that we established something that looks after them, their well-being, and we set up a trust. World Toad Association, incoming co-chair with that. You're the first to hear the news that's going to come through in a couple of days. But also I found that within the space of the World Toad Association, very warm, very welcoming, and I think we are really trying to break the barriers of the industry that we work in, the industries that we operate in. And I'd like to think that this is also setting the tone for what is going to come out of the World Toad Association. I've already mentioned that previously. I always say that I swapped jet fuel for horse manure, and all in all, it's still horsepower. So I was Chief Operating Officer running 9 airports in South Africa. And if you've landed in South Africa, you would have run through some of those airports. So I've had a lot of operational experience before coming here. And I've always said that across the variety of my careers, I've deliberately wanted to always challenge the status quo. It's something I fundamentally believe in, and Delphine touched on it earlier on to say that sometimes we do, most of the times as females, have to run the race 10 times harder, 5 times faster, just to be in the same place as our male counterparts. Is it tough? Yes, it is tough. Do I enjoy the challenge? Of course I enjoy the challenge, because at the end of the day, we are all human beings that inherently want to fit in, believe we can fit in, and definitely add value. And I think I am doing that in the careers that I've had. And here I am, like I said, very happy to present at this Asian Racing Conference and just share my experiences and some of the challenges. I'm not here to break down the stats and quote books, but like I say, just fundamentally sharing my story, hopefully touching on some of the elements that sometimes we may not necessarily see because we're not used to it, or sometimes we're just not aware of it, or maybe we come from environments that are not necessarily filled with people like me. But it's important, whether it's females, black females, women in the minority, whatever it is, that we're always mindful of exactly what it is that we're doing. I love this, the dark horse. Like I say, my journey has really, really been, for the longest of times, people count me as the underdog. And I really revel in that, because I love proving people wrong. And here I am once again, entered into an industry, thrust into an industry that was filled with plenty challenges. And I won't lie that my journey itself has been filled with challenges, triumphs, joy, sadness. Hey, we even cry tears. But at the end of the day, I'm now really embedded in an industry that I'm deeply passionate about. I spoke about earlier on about South Africa, the land of diversity and. But I think one of the most important things that stands out is Nelson Mandela made our country very famous. And he has this quote that says, "It always seems impossible until it is done." And for me, this quote truly emphasizes the power of perseverance and the importance of believing in oneself, even in the face of insurmountable challenges. So, what are the dangers of not being inclusive and diverse? Or what are the dangers of us kind of turning a blind eye on inclusivity and gender inclusivity? Is one, and a lot of times I've heard this, is we stand the chance of being seen as elitist. The perception that horse racing only belongs to the chosen few, people that were either born into the sport or have spent an entire lifetime in it. And I felt that myself because I always say, you know, having grown up in Soweto, we didn't have any experience with the horses. I think the only horse experience that I had was an old man that would come around every so often selling firewood, and he was using a horse to transport the firewood, and that's really the only experience that I'd had. I'd never been to the tracks. I'd never been anywhere near close to a horse, but now I'm in love. But precisely because it was pitched at a level that it was not meant to capture everybody, and this is what happens if we continue to not be inclusive and not be diverse: elitism. Exclusive and elusive, once again, it could give the impression that this industry does not tolerate, is not welcoming, or does not embrace the wider population, whether it be gender, age, etc., race, culture. And we need to be very careful about that. And in what we do deliberately after this, outside of this, will help start to overcome some of these stigmas that we don't actually want to carry forward with us. And lastly, exhausting and not revolutionary, sometimes and evolutionary. Sometimes if you're stuck in the past, if you're stuck in the ways of, this is how we've always done this is how we want to do it, we'll never change, we're okay the way we look, we're okay with how we've been set up, there is very much the real reality that will be seen as exhausting and not revolutionary and really, really not wanting to change. And in an industry, we've heard in the last 3 days, that is competing with either the share of wallet, share of eyes, with other sports and betting products that themselves have quite perhaps evolved in a far bigger manner than we have. It is crucial that we are deliberate about being inclusive and diverse. And I'd like to think that conversations like this get us closer to that. So how do we foster inclusivity and diversity? I mean, for me, it's the triple E's. It's the education, it's the empowerment, and empathy goes a super long way. We start with education as a starting gate. We need to actively dismantle stereotypes. You know, women aren't good enough, or women need to do this, or women shouldn't be doing this, or black people, whatever that stereotype is. We must be incredibly, incredibly guarded and make sure that we dismantle these stereotypes, because they do exist. Every single one of us has some stereotype or other. It might not be a gender, it might not be a racial, it might not be a cultural, but we tend to develop stereotypes as human beings, and we need to really break those down very, very quickly. Empowerment gives us speed, and by promoting fair opportunities in a space where talent can shine just is really, really wonderful. I always say that I was given this opportunity, yes, by merit, but because somebody saw something in me. Somebody saw some potential, my experience, but some potential, and somebody opened the door. And I took that fully on, but the reality is that gave me a foot in the door, and that gave me then the speed to be able to accelerate in me being able to deliver and start making a change in my own little space. And in doing that, within our organizations, we will be incredibly amazed how we unlock value, how we unlock potential and that talent just by believing in our people, especially those that are marginalized or that people don't really want to necessarily bet on. Finally, empathy. I always say as females, we're incredibly empathetic, and that goes a long way. To be able to feel and to be able to just understand and take time to see what the other person is going through goes a long way, and we're here to support each other, understanding that our differences are our strengths. So I said before I was in aviation, I forgot to mention the part that some years ago, I was convinced I was going to be an airline pilot, and I was going to fly around the world, and I realized getting into a cockpit that is literally 3x3 that, no, I'm sorry, this is not for me. But I did get my private pilot's license. And what you do before you even are licensed, as part of your training, you get to do what's called a solo, right? You go on a solo flight, and I did a solo navigation exercise. So I had to leave Johannesburg by myself, map it all out, go to the first airstrip, land, go to the second airstrip. Now, between the first airstrip that I landed in and the second airstrip was probably about a 15-minute difference. But hey, I got the compass heading wrong. And I felt myself getting a little bit lost, and I felt myself getting a little bit more lost. And the first thing that came to mind was, Fundi, you have limited fuel, you have other people that you need to think about in terms of a safety, and you've also got yourself to think about and this aircraft. So what did I do? Genuinely, honestly, openly, I got into the tower, and I was flying an airplane called Papa Makilo. I said, Papa Makilo, got a problem. I'm lost. And the tower controller at the time, incredibly kind, incredibly great, told me, fly a radial of 030, and you'll find yourself back at Lanseria, because they'd obviously had my flight plan. On landing, did I not have 10 gentlemen surrounding me, literally laughing? And I thought to myself, I'm safe, I'm back home, what is funny? And the one guy says, Fundi, you should never ever say that you're lost. I said, but what am I supposed to say? That you are situationally displaced. I said, my guy, it's the same thing. The fact that the tower got and had the empathy to assist me in getting back home safely, and I was able to genuinely admit that I was lost, is what I think got me through the day. So moral of the story is walking, or in our case, racing in another's shoes, understanding our trials, our triumphs, and our struggles enables us to become allies in the truest sense, and that's exactly what is required in this industry. The 7 simple points, without really going into detail, without going into the theory, diverse leadership and mentorship programs. I really, really need to urge, I mean, I've sat and I've looked around for the last 3 days. I've seen that there's an incredible amount of women that are taking part within the different levels, within the different organizations. But I do need to challenge us that at a senior level, at an executive level, at a council level, I've yet to see 1 or 2 females that are there. I've yet to see 1 or 2 black females that are taking part or that are sitting at the table. And I really, really need to ask that if there's one thing we take out from today, perhaps we need to think about how do we start changing the narrative and the look and feel of what our leadership looks like. People outside are looking in, and if our leadership is not indicative of the people that we're trying to also attract in the sport, then we're going to be finding ourselves wanting. Mentorship programs, I fundamentally believe that as we walk through this journey, when you walk this journey of one of a few, one of the first, it's an incredibly lonely journey. Take it from me, very lonely. But if you can tap into a mentorship program, if we can tap into and create those in our organizations, we will be setting ourselves up in an industry that really, really embodies diversity, equity, and inclusion. So let's put together diverse leadership teams, but also let's enhance it with strong mentorship programs. Inclusive hiring practices, let's go out of the bounds of, have you been in horse racing before? No. Have you grown up in horse racing? Let's open it up, because we'll truly be amazed at the talent that comes through. And by the way, this industry just has a natural way of capturing you. And for me, that's been the case. But had I not been a part of an inclusive hiring practice, maybe I wouldn't be sitting here today. Maybe I wouldn't be standing here. And that is true testament to seeing is believing and walking the walk. Cultural competency training, and it sounds so cliched, but it's incredibly important for us to always remind ourselves, think what you say before you say it, feel what you say before you say it, because sometimes we do, like that guy, say things that we think are okay, we think are normal, we think maybe are a joke, but maybe they're not. Maybe they're a little bit on the offensive side. And emphasizing on that cultural awareness, but cultural inclusivity, and just goes a long way. It really, really have those dialogues, have the workshops, and let's make sure that we're continuously building on each other. Community engagement and partnerships. I think for us, from a South African perspective, as for racing, we've taken this to heart to ensure that we engage with the communities, because we don't operate in a vacuum. Yes, it's a horse racing community, but it is a community, or it is a horse racing operation or a track surrounded by other communities that exist within a community. And we need to make sure that we support all sorts of grassroots initiatives and aim to introduce all the different communities that surround us into the horse racing industry, and for South Africa particularly been poignant for us. I've been very fortunate in my short 3.5 years in this position to have been, travel the world, and it's been an interesting journey. And let me preface it by saying this, that where I've gone, people have been incredibly, incredibly kind, incredibly generous, incredibly open. But I do always find that I'm probably one of a few. Last year, we were all at Melbourne, loved Flemington, but I looked around, one of a few. We went to Breeders' Cup in Santa Anita. I looked around, one of a few. Absolutely love going to Royal Ascot for the week. I look around, maybe there's 20 of us. And we really need to make sure that there is a lot more diversity in the people that we attract, the people not only in our organizations, but into the sport as well. So it's about marketing and media and how we start to highlight some of these stories and achievements so that others can be inspired to join us. Regular assessment and accountability. I think set clear goals. It's sometimes difficult. Do you want to define and say we must hire X amount of people by this time that look like this or that are like this? Maybe we do. Maybe that's how you actually start to put pen to paper and start to hold people accountable towards achieving that goal. Because sometimes if we just talk and we don't actually put it down on paper, it becomes, once again, something that is potentially never going to be obtained. And last but not least, inclusive event planning. I've already mentioned that when I go to the different, and I say those 3 events or those 4 countries specifically because, in America, there is a far larger population of African Americans. And naturally, I would think that we have more African Americans coming to racing, but it didn't happen. I didn't see it. I'm told, and maybe I need to go experience it in Florida, that that's a different landscape altogether. But really, when we think about event planning, we need to go out of our way just to make sure that we really bring in a broader type of audience into our own events. So for us, as for racing, this is what a little bit of inclusivity looks like. We still have a long way to go. Like I say, we've got Rachel Vineker, the only female jockey that we've got in South Africa, who's been doing super well, was out in Saudi Arabia a couple of weeks ago. We have got female trainers. We've got a few very, very, very good breeders that are female. We have got a few black jockeys that we're very proud of that have achieved so much, not only on the South African stage, but internationally, like Muzieni there, who's, I think, also ridden in Singapore a few times. But the reality is that is the melting pot of South Africa, and that's what we strive for, and that's what I hope as I leave and I finalize my presentation today, that this is what you will remember, the colorfulness of the slide and what we need to do just to bring it. You can always rent me out as well for events. Happy to come and I'll also take pictures and you can use me as your pictures. So I started off with something light. I'm going to end off with something light because it is a heavy topic, I know. And as I put this down as well, when I had to prepare for this afternoon session about what do you wear? Guys, it is a real thing as females, Is it a dress because you need to get light? No, it's not going to be a dress. It's got to be pants. Is it heels? No, it can't be heels. Or maybe it is heels because you're going to be standing. What color lipstick? You must fold your legs. You must cross your... It's a lot. So I thought this was such a beautiful... Also from Barbie, the only other thing that I got out of that. And it just really... just points it out for me that it is literally impossible to be a woman sometimes. You're so beautiful and so smart, and it kills me that you don't mind, that you don't think you're good enough. Like we always have to be extraordinary, but somehow we're always doing it wrong. You have to be thin, but not too thin. And you can never say you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but you still have to be thin. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money because that's crass. You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supported, you want to be a mother, but you can't talk about your kids all the damn time. You have to be a career woman, but you always have to be looking out for other people, and you have to be a wife, and you have to be a sister. You have to answer for men's bad behavior sometimes, which is insane. But if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much, or that you threaten other women because you're supposed to be part of the sisterhood. But you must always stand out and always be grateful, but never forget that the system is rigged. So find a way to acknowledge all of that and also be grateful at the same time and also kick ass in your job. You have to never get old, never be rude, never show off, never be selfish, never fall down, never fail, never show fear, never get out of line. It's too hard. It's too contradictory, and nobody gives you a medal or says thank you. And it turns out, in fact, that not only are you doing everything wrong, but also everything is your fault. I'm just so tired of watching myself and every single other woman tie herself into knots just so that people will like us. I know it sounds very heavy, but I think what I'm trying to say is we have our jobs, we have this perspective, we've got to put it all together, and we are juggling a lot, and we can't do it with all of these in the context. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you very much indeed. You've certainly spelled it out for us very clearly there. Thank you very much for that. I'm just going to take a few minutes of your time, because there are one or two things I want to pick up on what you've said there. You have something in common with Delphine and with Joe, because you've come from outside the industry. You don't have a background in racing. That wasn't what brought you into it in the first place, as you said. In fact, you have a private pilot's license. So I understand where your previous job and interest linked. Was it just about taking on a challenge that you took this job? Because it's a bit of a sticking Humpty Dumpty together again job, I think, when you started. Or was there, and if there was, what was there in racing that did draw you in?
So I always like to tell the story that at the time I got the call about this job, I actually wasn't looking for a job. I was wanting to go on a sabbatical, and I just wanted to find myself. And when the recruitment agency called me, I said, I need to always be aligned with the industry and aligned with the product so that I can do it justice. And he said, it's horse racing. And he said, it's Phumelela. Many of you will know that Phumelela is a previous company that went into business rescue. And I said, thank you very much, but no thank you. I'm not the person for this job. And he said, no, hang on. We are particularly looking for somebody that hasn't been in this industry in the job, because we actually need to run it like a business. And with your operational experience, we believe that that's what you'll bring. We'll surround you with people that have the industry knowledge. You'll get to know the industry knowledge. And for me, I think that's what sold it. So coming into the position, I definitely knew that I was bringing my own skills and something different to the table. Augmenting it with everything else. Here's the reality. You'll never walk into a room and be the person that knows everything. And I think for me, understanding and leveraging off the team's capabilities was what made it easy for me to then accept the job. But I also secondly say that the shareholder, when I had the conversation with them, was very particular. And their passion for the industry is actually what sold me over the edge. To save this industry, and I thought, hang on, there must be something special about this industry, that people are willing to put in so much money to revive this company that was almost liquidated, that captured me. And so it was a little bit of intrigue. But three, it was also, there's not many people from Soweto or black people that look like me in this. So I am going in there to challenge the status quo.
Right, you can take it on as a job, part of a career, I understand that. But to have it as a passion, to start owning horses is another step again. So somewhere down the line, you have been bitten hard by the bug. What was it that did that to you? Because you've just given a great account here of all those amazing places you've been to and probably felt alienated from to a degree each time as well. So where's the passion bit coming in?
It's the love of the horse. That has captured me. I will never underestimate, just because I've never been next to a horse, close to a horse, on a horse before I joined. That has almost been the glue. But equally, as much as alienated as I've been, the people in this industry are incredibly kind, incredibly warm, incredibly, some, because there are others that are not, let's be honest, that have just been so amazing. You know, I found kind of a camaraderie, you know, within the World Tote Association.
And congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I found camaraderie with my own team, you know, with my own board. So I think that for me, and when I said the empathy, it's that human element that has kept me going and has kept me seeing and fighting for another day.
And can I just ask you, so we've got the perspective of this racing world and the way they perhaps perceive you, but you are also dealing, as a result of the sport, with people in the media, with government, with many different, well, they're not even necessarily stakeholders actually, but many different sectors of industry. Where does racing fit in the classroom? You know, how near the front are they or the back?
And such an interesting question, because in my previous job, the airports are state-owned, so government interface was my thing. So not at all uncomfortable with interacting with government. But here's the catch. When I then moved into this position, you meet government and they say, oh, you are the people that ill-treat the horses, or you are the people that ill-treat the grooms. That kind of had me shaken. So changing that narrative, which is a lot of what we had to do in 4 racing, with, you know, with the team, changing the narrative to actually show people that this is a beautiful sport. This is a sport that really encapsulates fun, exhilaration, excitement, tears. So many different elements are captured. So from a government perspective, we had to do some work there. Owners, you know, there's some great owners, and I think that individual interaction to understand, which is why I felt compelled to be an owner myself, because unless I own and understand what the owners are going through, it becomes very difficult for me to put forward a solution. So part of the ownership journey of doing that was that, but also to say, you can own a horse, you can be in a syndicate, it is possible, and driving that narrative. But I enjoy our jockeys and our grooms, right? Our jockeys, I always say that probably the horse, I've said, captured me. That is the equine athlete without a doubt. But our jockeys, incredible athletes that somehow just don't fall on that line as athletes. And so if you start to appreciate them and give them that recognition, it also starts to feel, you know, for them that they bring something equally to the table. And finally, the grooms, you know, in the South African context, that, you know, the last few years or the last couple of decades, our grooms have never really been taken care of. And it's over the last few years that as the operators, we started changing that stance to say, you are such an integral part of this value chain. Being able to talk to them, whether it's in Zulu, Xhosa, you know, Sotho, just changes it for them completely differently. And I'll never forget, one of the grooms almost brought me to tears. He says, Fundi, you are the first person to actually ever speak to us as if we were human beings, because they could see somebody else that looked like them. They could relate to them. And for me, it's always being in there as a person and bring myself to the situation.
That is quite a message, that. One last point I want to make. If you go to Fundi's X account, or Twitter account, X account as we call it, you've got a quote on there, and it's from Marianne Williamson. And it says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. And I just wonder if you could put that into a racing perspective, what that could mean perhaps for racing.
Whew, now you're really putting me on the spot. And perhaps what I can say is our deepest fear perhaps doesn't lie on the outside. What we are fearful of in this room may not necessarily be the ugly monster on the outside. Until we realize amongst ourselves that we need to collaborate, we need to be inclusive, that we need to work together, then half the battle may just be won. Until such time that we start operating and hunting as a pack, literally, then the world is literally for us to conquer. Because I think that the minute, what is that other saying, that something about divide and conquer. The minute that we are all divided, whether it be different operators, different toad, fixed off, whatever it is, our differences, people will always use that against us, and they will win whilst we're having these battles, whilst we are being non-inclusive amongst ourselves. And by the time we look up, it'll be too late.
I think Winfried would be very pleased to hear that. That is be connected, stride together in a nutshell as a final answer. Fundi, thank you so much for your contribution, which I think is extremely important. Ladies and gentlemen, Fundi Sithebe, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.